When HOA Karen called 911 because I closed my ranch gate for my daughter's wedding, I knew it was time to teach her a lesson about who really owns this land. My name's Jack Thompson, a 50-year-old rancher from just outside Austin, Texas, where my family's 200-acre spread has stood proud since my granddaddy staked it in 1932. This isn't just dirt and grass, it's legacy, blood, and the kind of freedom you don't find in cookie-cutter suburbs. So, when Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed queen of the nearby Cedar Hills estates, decided my private ranch was her personal playground, I wasn't just annoyed. I was ready for war. Have you ever had an HOA try to control your property or invade your privacy? Drop your story in the comments! I bet you've got a tale that'd make my blood boil as much as this one. See, my ranch isn't part of any HOA. It predates the shiny new development that sprouted up a mile down the road, where folks pay big bucks for manicured lawns and Karen's iron-fisted rulebook. Cedar Hills is one of those places where every mailbox is identical, and God help you if your grass grows a quarter-inch too long. Karen, the HOA president, is infamous for her clipboard, toting patrols, slapping fines on anyone who dares to think for themselves. But my ranch, it's my kingdom, and I don't answer to her or her bylaws. The trouble started in spring 2025, when I was planning my daughter Emily's wedding. Emily's my only kid, 26 years old, with her mama's smile and her daddy's stubborn streak. She wanted a small, intimate wedding right here on the ranch, under the big oak where her grandparents tied the knot. I wasn't about to let anything ruin that day. Not the weather, not a busted caterer, and sure as hell not Karen Mitchell. To keep things private, I planned to close the ranch gate for the weekend. That gate's been there since I was a boy, a heavy iron thing with Thompson Ranch welded across the top. It's not just a decoration, it's a line in the sand. My land, my rules. Now, you'd think closing a gate on private property wouldn't cause a stir, but Karen had other ideas. See, there's a dirt road that cuts through my ranch, used mostly by me and my hands to move cattle or haul feed. It's been there forever, long before Cedar Hills existed. Problem is, some of the HOA folks like to treat it like their personal shortcut to the county highway, even though it's not a public road. I've never made a fuss about it, live and let live, you know. But for Emily's wedding, I needed privacy, no random SUVs kicking up dust while my girl says her vows. So, I decided to lock the gate and post a sign, private event, no access. That's when Karen lost her mind. She'd been sniffing around ever since I started wedding prep, asking nosy questions about community impact and traffic flow. I brushed her off, figuring she'd get the hint. But Karen doesn't do hints. She's the kind of woman who'd argue with a brick wall and expect it to apologize. The day I put up the sign, she stormed over in her pristine white SUV, her face redder than a summer tomato. Jack Thompson, she barked. You can't close this road. It's a community thoroughfare, and the HOA has rights to it. I leaned against the gate, chewing a piece of straw, and told her plain as day, Karen, this is my land. My deed says so, and your HOA doesn't get a vote. She huffed, muttered something about proper channels, and peeled out, leaving a cloud of dust I hoped wouldn't settle on my mood. I should have known it wouldn't end there. Karen's not the type to back down. She's the type to escalate, and escalate she did, in a way that'd make your jaw drop. On the morning of Emily's wedding, with the chairs set up and the florist fussing over tablecloths, Karen called 911. Yeah, you heard that right. She told the dispatcher I was blocking public access and causing a disturbance by closing my own damn gate. I didn't know whether to laugh or cuss when I heard the sirens. All I knew was, this wasn't just about a road anymore. It was about principle, about standing up to a bully who thought she could steamroll me because she had a fancy title and a superiority complex. As the police rolled up, I felt my blood pressure spike, but I kept my cool. Emily was inside getting ready, and I wasn't about to let Karen's nonsense ruin her day. The cops were polite enough, just doing their job, and I could tell they weren't thrilled about being dragged into an HOA spat. I showed them my deed, walked them through the property line, and explained the wedding. They nodded, scribbled some notes, and turned to Karen, who was standing there with her arms crossed, looking like she expected a sweat team to back her up. I won't spoil what happened next. You'll have to wait for the rest of the story. But let's just say Karen's little stunt didn't go the way she planned. This isn't just a story about a gate or a wedding. It's about what happens when someone tries to take what's yours, whether it's your land, your freedom, or your peace of mind. I've dealt with rustlers, draughts, and bank loans, but Karen Mitchell, she's a whole different kind of varmint. By the time this is over, I'll show her that my ranch isn't just a piece of dirt. It's a line she can't cross. Stick around, because this fight's just getting started, and I've got a few tricks up my sleeve that'll make you cheer. But it all started with a private event sign. That humble board, staked by the gate of my 200-acre Texas ranch, was like waving a red flag at a bull named Karen Mitchell. My spread just outside Austin is a slice of freedom carved out by my granddaddy long before the Cedar Hills Estates HOA sprouted its manicured lawns nearby. With my daughter Emily's wedding days away, I was neck deep in making her dream day perfect, not bracing for a turf war with a suburban tyrant. But Karen, the IOA's self-crowned queen, saw my sign as a declaration of war, and I was about to learn how far her entitlement stretched. Emily's wedding was set for a spring weekend in 2025, a cozy affair under the ancient oak where my parents swapped vows. She wanted it simple, 50 guests, family and friends, with the ranch's rolling pastures and glinting creek as the backdrop. To keep it private, I brought in 2 local security guys, Mike and Dave, to man the gate and check invites. No showa joggers or dog walkers were going to crash my girl's big day. A week out, I hammered up the private event no access sign next to the Iron Thompson Ranch emblem. It was clear as a summer sky, my land, my rules. I thought that'd keep the peace. I was dead wrong. Karen pounced on that sign faster than a coyote on a stray hen. I was fixing a fence post when her white SUV skidded to a halt, gravel flying like shrapnel. She stormed out, decked in a blazer that screamed, "I run this town," her eyes blazing at the sign like it insulted her personally. "Jack," she bellowed, charging toward me with a finger aimed like a dart. "You can't close this road. It's a community thoroughfare, and the HOA has rights." I set my hammer down, wiped the sweat from my brow, and gave her a look that said, "You're joking, right?" "Karen," I replied, calm as a Sunday morning, "this is my ranch, my gate, my road. It's private property, and I'm locking it for Emily's wedding." She didn't flinch. "Our bylaws guarantee shared access." She shot back, brandishing a folder thick with papers like it was a holy relic. "This road's been used by residents for years." I nearly chuckled. That road was a dirt track my family cut for moving cattle, older than her entire neighborhood. Sure, some HOA folks used it as a shortcut to the highway, but that didn't make it theirs. I leaned on the fence, voice steady. "My deed's been around longer than Cedar Hills. Your bylaws don't touch my land. Want to argue? Get a lawyer." Her face flushed crimson, and she rifled through her papers, muttering about community rights, like a preacher quoting scripture. I knew the law was on my side. HOAs are a headache. 38% of homeowners can't stand them per YouGov, but they only rule properties under their contract. My ranch, predating Cedar Hills by generations, was untouchable. Karen didn't care about facts, though. She was all bluster, the kind who'd fine you for a crooked mailbox and sleep like a baby. She snapped her folder shut, eyes narrowing. "This isn't over, Jack. I'll handle this through proper channels." I tipped my hat, half smirking. "Good luck with that. Gate's still closing." She spun on her heels, hopped in her SUV, and roared off, leaving a dust cloud I hoped wouldn't settle on my mood. Back at the ranch, I dove into wedding prep. Emily was glowing, fussing over flowers and music, and I'd be damned if Karen's outburst dimmed her shine. We set up chairs under the oak, draped fairy lights across the barn, and hauled in tables for the caterer. Mike and Dave, my security duo, scoped out the gate, ready to turn away any HOA stragglers. I even called my buddy Tom, a lawyer, to triple-check my deed. He snorted when I mentioned Karen's shared access claim. "She's got nothing, Jack," he said. "Your ranch is yours, lock, stock, and barrel. She's just making noise." That eased my mind, but Karen's proper channels. Threat lingered like a storm cloud. Cedar Hills wasn't just a neighborhood, it was Karen's empire. She ruled with an iron grip, slapping fines for unapproved fences or unsightly gardens. She'd once tried to strong-arm a guy into ditching a flagpole because it clashed with the aesthetic. My ranch was beyond her reach, but that didn't stop her from acting like she owned it. As I helped Emily pick tablecloths, I kept glancing at the gate, half expecting Karen to roll up with a megaphone. I didn't know what she'd pull, but I knew it'd be bigger than a nasty letter. By the day before the wedding, the ranch was a picture of perfection. Wildflowers swayed, the creek sparkled, and Emily was overjoyed. I'd poured my heart into this land, raised my daughter here, and now I was giving her the wedding she deserved. Karen Mitchell wasn't going to steal that, no matter how many papers she waved. But as I locked the gate that night, the private event sign glowing under the stars, my gut churned. Karen wasn't just mistaken, she was relentless. And I had a sinking feeling she'd do something so outrageous, it'd make my head spin. Then Karen dialed 911 and brought the police to my wedding. I'd known Karen Mitchell was trouble, but I never pegged her for the type to turn my daughter Emily's big day into a circus. My 200-acre Texas ranch, a private oasis outside Austin, was decked out for the spring 2025 ceremony, chairs under the old oak, fairy lights twinkling, and a private event sign on the gate to keep the Cedar Hills Estates HOA at bay. After Karen's tantrum over my closing the ranch road, I thought she'd sulk or file a complaint. Instead, she went full nuclear, and I was left staring down squad cars while Emily adjusted her veil. The wedding morning was perfect. The air smelled of wildflowers, and the creek burbled like it was in on the celebration. Guests trickled in, checked by my security guys, Mike and Dave at the gate. Emily was radiant, her dress catching the sunlight as she laughed with her bridesmaids. I was tying my tie in the barn, stealing glances at the setup, when Dave radioed me. "Jack, we've got a problem. Cops are here." My stomach dropped. I hustled to the gate where 2 patrol cars idled, lights flashing. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed, smirking like she'd just won the lottery. Her white SUV was parked crooked, a testament to her haste. The lead officer, a stocky guy named Ramirez, approached, notepad in hand. "Mr. Thompson, we got a call about a disturbance and blocked public access." I forced a smile, keeping my cool for Emily's sake. "Officer, this is my ranch. Private property. I closed the gate for my daughter's wedding." Karen butted in, voice shrill. "That road's a community easement. He's blocking residents' rights, causing chaos!" I raised an eyebrow. Chaos. The only chaos was her ego. I handed Ramirez my deed, a weathered document I'd kept handy since Karen's last outburst. "This says the road's mine. No easement, no HOA. Check the county records." Ramirez skimmed the deed while his partner, a younger officer named Chen, kept an eye on Karen, who was pacing like a caged bobcat. The road in question, a dirt track my family used for cattle, wasn't public, never had been. But Karen had spun a tale to 911, claiming I was causing a public safety issue. I glanced at the wedding setup, where guests were starting to notice the flashing lights. Emily was still inside, thank God, but I could feel my blood simmering. Karen wasn't just overreaching, she was trying to ruin the day I'd planned for months. After a tense few minutes, Ramirez handed back my deed. "Looks clear to me. County records confirm this is private property. You're within your rights to close the gate." He turned to Karen, his tone firm. "Mom, this is a private ranch, not your personal highway. Next time call a lawyer, not us." Chen stifled a grin. and I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Karen's face went from smug to sore, like she'd swallowed a lemon.
"This is outrageous,"
she sputtered. "The HOA will hear about this." Ramirez didn't blink. "Misusing 911's a misdemeanor in Texas, ma'am. I'd rethink your next move." That shut her up, but her eyes burned with fury. The cops jotted down a report, which I asked to be saved digitally for later. They tipped their hats and drove off, leaving Karen fuming by her SUV. I nodded to Mike and Dave to keep watch, then headed back to the barn, heart pounding but head high. The ceremony was delayed by 20 minutes, but we got it back on track. Emily walked down the aisle oblivious to the drama, and I swore I'd make Karen regret her stunt. She'd crossed a line, and I wasn't the type to let that slide. Karen's 911 call wasn't just bold, it was illegal. Texas law doesn't take kindly to bogus emergency calls, and her public access claim was as flimsy as tissue paper. HOAs like Cedar Hills can't touch private property outside their jurisdiction, a fact my lawyer buddy Tom had confirmed. But Karen wasn't done. As the reception kicked off with guests dancing under the stars, I overheard her muttering to a neighbor about legal action and OA authority. She was humiliated, sure, but that only made her more dangerous. I knew she'd come at me harder, probably at the next HOA meeting, where she'd try to rally her loyalists. The wedding went on, and Emily was none the wiser. She and her new husband, Mark, cut the cake, and I gave a toast that got more laughs than tears. A win in my book. But Karen's stunt gnawed at me. She'd tried to weaponize the law against me, all because I wouldn't bow to her overblown sense of power. I wasn't just protecting my ranch anymore. I was defending my family's joy, my legacy, and every property owner who'd ever been bullied by an HOA. According to Bankrate, HOAs often overstep, but they crumble when faced with clear evidence. I had my deed, the police report, and a growing fire in my gut. As the night wound down, I stood by the gate, the private event sign still proud. Karen's SUV was long gone, but her threat of legal action hung in the air. I wasn't naive. She'd twist this to paint herself as the victim. But I'd been a rancher too long to back down from a fight. I'd faced worse than Karen Mitchell, blizzards, bank loans, even a rogue bull once. She thought she could intimidate me. She was about to learn that messing with a Texan's land and his daughter's wedding was a losing bet. I locked the gate, the clang echoing in the quiet night, and vowed to turn her overreach into her downfall. That's when I turned their overreach into a media circus. Karen Mitchell's 911 stunt at my daughter Emily's wedding had crossed every line, and I wasn't about to let her slink away with a slapped wrist. My 200-acre Texas ranch outside Austin was my sanctuary, not the Cedar Hills estate show's playground. After the police shut down Karen's public access nonsense on the wedding day in spring 2025, I knew she'd regroup and come at me harder, probably at the next HOA meeting. But I wasn't raised to wait for trouble. I decided to hit back, and hit back hard, with a plan that'd make Karen wish she'd never dialed emergency services. First, I called my lawyer friend, Tom Reynolds, who'd been chuckling over Karen's antics since I first mentioned her. Over coffee at my kitchen table, he pored over the HOA's bylaws, a dense stack of rules that governed Cedar Hills but not my ranch. "Jack," he said, grinning, "Karen's got nothing. Your property predates their development by decades. She's misreading a community access clause that only applies to owned roads." He tapped a page. "This road. It's yours, always has been." She's bluffing. That was all I needed to hear. Tom also pulled my deed and the police report from the wedding, both ironclad proof that Karen's demands were baseless. Armed with facts, I was ready to play dirty, but legally. My next move was pure Texas ingenuity. If Karen thought my ranch road was community property, I'd make her pay for it literally. I had a new sign made, big and bold, ranch access fee, 10 per person for OA members, cash only. I planted it right next to the private event sign at the gate, where nobody could miss it. The fine print noted that all proceeds would go to a local veterans charity. Just to twist the knife. Property owners can charge for access to private roads. HOA law backs that up, and I was well within my rights. I told Mike and Dave, my security guys, to collect fees from any Cedar Hills folks trying to cut through. Karen wanted my road. I joked to Emily, no, she's paying tolls to my charity fund. The real genius, though, was the media. I called up a buddy at KN, Austin's local news station, and pitched the story. Rancher vs. the battle over a private road. They ate it up. A news van rolled out the next day, cameras catching the access fee, sign, and the sprawling beauty of my ranch. I gave them the full tale, Karen's 911 call, the police shutting her down, and her obsession with a road that wasn't hers. This is about property rights, I told the reporter, leaning on the gate. I'm just a dad who wanted a private wedding for his daughter. Karen turned it into a war. The crew also interviewed a few Cedar Hills residents, some of whom admitted they were fed up with Karen's heavy-handed rules. One guy, a retired mechanic, said, "She fined me for parking my truck in my own driveway. Jack's got my vote." The story aired that night and went viral by morning. Clips spread across social media with hashtags like FayRanchVCHOA and FayKaren911 trending. Commenters roasted Karen's entitlement, with one viral post reading, "She called 911 over a gate. Texas don't play." The coverage painted me as the underdog standing up to HOA tyranny, and Karen as the overzealous bully. Better yet, it cracked the HOA's ranks. A handful of Cedar Hills residents reached out, quietly cheering me on. One woman, a nurse named Linda, slipped me an email. "Karen's been running this place like a dictator. Keep fighting." I saved that email, along with the news footage, in a digital folder. Evidence was piling up, and I wasn't done. Karen, predictably, was livid. She left me a voicemail, her voice dripping with venom. "Jack, this stunt won't stand. You're mocking the HOA, and I'll see you at the next meeting." I played it for Tom, who laughed so hard he spilled his coffee. "She's digging her own grave," he said. "Keep the pressure on." So I did. Mike and Dave collected $120 in access fees over the next few days, mostly from HOA folks too stubborn to take the highway. I made a show of donating it to the veterans charity on camera, thanking Cedar Hills for their generosity. The news ran a follow-up, and Karen's name took another hit. The media frenzy shifted the tide. Cedar Hills residents started questioning Karen's leadership, whispering about her fines and vendettas. I heard through the grapevine that she was scrambling to rally her loyalists for the HOA meeting, desperate to spin the narrative. But I had the upper hand. The wedding had gone off beautifully despite her stunt, with Emily dancing under the stars, unaware of the chaos. That fueled me. This wasn't just about my ranch anymore. It was about every homeowner who'd been bullied by an HO drunk on power. FENDA law notes that OAs crumble when their bylaws are misapplied, and Karen's misstep was about to cost her. As the HOA meeting loomed, I fine-tuned my plan. Tom was prepping a presentation, my deed, the police report, and the bylaws, all ready to dismantle Karen's claims. I kept the access fee, sign up, a daily jab at her ego, and tipped off Keksan to cover the meeting. The viral story had drawn a crowd, with residents itching to see if Karen would double down or crack. I wasn't nervous, I was ready. I'd faced draughts, bank loans, and ornery bulls, but Karen Mitchell. She was just a loudmouth with a folder full of nonsense. By the time that meeting rolled around, I'd have her cornered, and the whole county would be watching her empire crumble. When the HOA meeting came, Karen's empire crumbled. After turning her 9/11 fiasco into a viral media storm, Jack Thompson, stood ready to bury her overreach once and for all. My 200-acre Texas ranch outside Austin was my fortress, untouchable by the Cedar Hills Estate HOA's rules. Karen Mitchell, the OA's self-anointed char, had tried to claim my private road as a community thoroughfare during my daughter Emily's spring 2025 wedding. Her stunt, calling the cops to my gate, backfired, and my Ranch access fee retaliation, paired with Kexan's news coverage, had the whole county buzzing. Now at the packed HOA meeting, I was set to deliver the knockout punch. The Cedar Hills clubhouse was a circus, standing room only, with residents, reporters, and even a Kexan camera crew crammed in. Karen sat at the head table, her usual smirk replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. She'd spent the week spinning tales of community rights to her loyalists, but the viral news clips and my 10-toll sign had fractured her base. I walked in with Tom Reynolds, my lawyer buddy, carrying a folder with my deed, the police report from the wedding, and Tom's analysis of the HOA bylaws. The air crackled with anticipation like a storm about to break. Karen opened the meeting, her voice dripping with forced calm. "We're here to address the misuse of community resources by non-members," she said, glaring at me. "Mr. Thompson's actions have disrupted Cedar Hills." A few of her cronies nodded, but others shifted uncomfortably. I caught Linda, the nurse who'd emailed me, smirking in the back. Karen rambled about shared access and resident safety, but her words sounded hollow after the media painted her as a 9/11 abusing bully. When she finished, the board chair, a tired-looking accountant named Greg, called me up. "Mr. Thompson, your response." I stood, boots clicking on the floor, and laid my folder on the table. "Karen claims my ranch road's a community asset," I said, voice steady. "Let's set the record straight." I held up my deed, dated 1932. "This proves my ranch predates Cedar Hills by decades. The road's mine, always has been." I passed the deed to Greg, who nodded as he skimmed it. Next, I pulled the police report. On my daughter's wedding day, Karen called 911, claiming I was blocking public access. The cops checked my deed and told her she was wrong. They also warned her about misusing 911, a misdemeanor in Texas. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's face went pale. Tom took over, flipping open the HOA bylaws. "Karen's leaning on a community access clause," he said, pointing to a highlighted line. "But it only applies to HOA-owned roads. Jack's ranch isn't under your jurisdiction. She's got no legal ground." He slid the bylaws to the board, who passed it around, frowning. I sealed it with the Kexan footage, played on my phone for all to see, the access fee, sign, my interview about property rights, and residents like Linda calling Karen a dictator. The room erupted in whispers. Greg banged his gavel for order. A resident stood up, Mike, the retired mechanic from the news. "Karen fined me $200 for my truck's oil stain," he said. "Now she's harassing Jack over his own land. This is nuts." Others chimed in, airing gripes about Karen's fines and vendettas. Linda raised her hand. "She threatened to sue me for my garden gnomes. Jack's fighting for all of us." Karen tried to interrupt, but Greg cut her off. "Let's vote," he said. The board, under pressure from the crowd and Kexan's cameras, moved to censure Karen for misrepresenting the bylaws and abusing her authority. The vote was unanimous. Karen sat frozen, her empire in ashes. Greg cleared his throat. "Mrs. Mitchell, we also request your resignation as president." The room held its breath. Karen's eyes darted, but with the crowd, media, and her own board against her, she had no play. "Fine," she spat, shoving her papers into her bag. "You'll regret this." She stormed out, the door slamming behind her. The crowd cheered, and I felt a weight lift. Greg issued a formal apology to me, which I accepted with a nod. "Just keep your HOA off my land," I said, earning laughs. Emily's wedding had been a triumph despite Karen's chaos. The next day I hosted a barbecue on the ranch, inviting neighbors, including some HOA folks who'd backed me. Linda brought her famous peach cobbler, and Mike swapped stories about Karen's reign of terror. I donated the $120 in excess fees to the Veterans Charity, as promised, and Kexan ran a feel-good follow-up. The ranch, with its gate and private event sign, became a symbol of standing firm. Karen slunk away, her influence shattered. Funcho law confirms courts protect owners from HOA overreach, and I'd proved it without stepping into one. As the sun set over the creek, I reflected on the fight. Karen thought she owned my ranch. I quipped to Tom, "No, she's lucky I don't charge her for the view." He roared, and we toasted to property rights. This wasn't just my win. It was for every Texan who'd faced a bully with a rule book. The ranch, my legacy, stood stronger than ever, a beacon for freedom. If you loved this story of standing up to HOA tyranny, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more tales of justice and laughs. Share your own HOA horror stories below. Let's keep the fight alive.